Hi everyone, welcome back to Code for Data. We are kicking off an end-to-end series building a fully automated, event-driven cloud-native data pipeline on AWS. And in this video, this first video of the series, we are going to break down the complete system architecture, cover the or cover the two critical flows, deployment flow and the data flow. So let's start with this. So so I have the school architecture presentation here, architecture diagram presentation here. So as you can see here, we have different pipeline components here and their capabilities. So this is an event-driven ingestion. So basically, it is referring to uh, the ingestion or the data collection part will depend on the event. So we can basically do some schedules, and based on those schedules, we'll start collecting the data. Okay, and it can be the API endpoints, it can be the scrappers, it can be the crawlers, all those things. Then we have SQS and DL query resolution. So basically, we have this setup in place so that, like, let's say if something is failing or if we are not able to get the data uh, uh, due to some reason, it should be able to handle that. And then we have the automated CI/CD and INC. So this is basically referring to uh, the deployment flow, basically where we are going to have Jenkins, Terraform to deploy the entire infrastructure or manage the entire shipping of our code to the higher environments. And then we have this real-time pipeline monitoring. So we are going to have a interactive dashboard just to trigger the pipeline runs, track the SQS, all those sort of things. So, and this entire thing will use these tools and the technologies. So we are going to use AWS Cloud, Terraform for IC, Python as our backend, Docker containers for the containerization, Jenkins for the setting up the entire end-to-end pipeline, and then Park Lakehouse basically referring to any of our S3 bucket, which we are going to convert them as a data lake or lakehouse. Okay, let's jump here to the architecture. Okay, so I'll start with the deployment lifecycle. So the CI/CD pipeline. So you can see we have Jenkins in place, which is basically going to host the entire thing. In Jenkins, we are going to have different stages, which will basically manage the entire deployment. So and then we have Terraform ISC, which is basically will be used to provision different AWS services. Docker containers. Docker container will be used to containerize or to convert the entire code base into one single image or the working code into a single image so that we can ship that to AWS ECR, where we can use it in AWS Lambda or your AWS ECS. Okay. Now coming back to data flow. So if you see here, because this is an event-driven architecture, so we are going to use AWS Event Bridge. So Event Bridge will basically going to hold all of your schedules, the cron jobs, all those things. Then we have data collector in place, which is going to include AWS Lambda or ECS service. So basically we are going to execute the Lambda function or ECS task to execute our scripts or the scrappers or the crawlers. Raw S3 bucket will be the destination for the initial data which we are collecting through the data collector. And then we have AWS SQS queue, which is basically going to manage the entire, like all the schedules and everything. And then we have AWS SQS DLQ, which is basically uh, your retry mechanism, basically going to take care of the part where if we are fail to do some execution, it is going to take care of that part. And then we have data processing worker, which is basically your Lambda function or ECS task, which is going to apply all the transformations which are being requested by the higher systems. And then we have our final S3 bucket, which is basically your final destination where we are going to put or save all of our transform or clean data sets. And finally, we have a database, which is basically we are referring it as an analytical database. So basically, it can have both sort of things. Like one is your final clean data, and also there will be some tables which is going to hold all the information related to uh, like different sort of things we are doing in the entire flow. So it can be the health of the data collectors, your events, the storage of your S3, different folders. Then you're managing the AWS SQS queue, all sort of things like we can have there. But yeah, we'll see that later in the video in the series, like how we are going to do that. Okay, so this is the full architecture where you can see like this is a two-layered architecture where the first one is your deployment and infrastructure CI/CD track, and the second one is the actual infra, which is your runtime event-driven data stream. So yeah, this is about the entire uh, data pipeline. So later on the series, we are going to pick each and every point in very depth, or we'll keep it very simple so that everyone can understand and start building their own data pipelines without much efforts. And also uh, and also this is how our project structure will look like the directory, what sort of folders and everything we have here. So as you can see, we have src, which is going to have our ingester and processor. So ingester is your data collector part. So ingester is your data collector part, and then you have your processor, which is basically your data processing worker. And then you have your utilities, basically like let's say any utility which we are going to use across the system. Okay. And then we have our Terraform, which is basically being used in the CI/CD setup. So this will be used here. And as you can see, we have different modules here, like which is referring to different AWS services. And then we have some of the test cases. So we are going to write some test cases for different scripts we are going to write in ingester or the processors. And then we have our Jenkins file. So Jenkins file will have the complete set of instructions for different stages, set of commands for each and every stage. Like let's say for example, if we are executing a stage where we are using Terraform only to provision all the AWS services, so it will contain all the relevant commands there. And also, to make everything very short and easy, we are going to use anti-gravity IDE, and basically I have a Gemini subscription, so I'm going to use all the available models by Gemini. We'll try to make these videos very like implementation oriented, rather than focusing on the coding part, because now we can generate the code using these AI assistants, but the implementation part is still a bit tricky. So we'll try to focus on those part only. So yeah, that's all for this video. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you.